I'm just so happy with audio gear these days. This interface is sick. I looked on forums and everybody kind of poo-pooed this UA Aero interface. I like this better than the Apollo. Yes, I know it only has one chip, but I'm not using UA plugins on all my shit. I have all the equivalent plugins in many ways. So really where UA shines and where I love UA plugins is those Unison preamps are amazing. For example, if you plug a guitar into a UA interface, you have Fender Tweed, you have Ampeg SVTR. So you have all these different amps, basically simulates going through an amp. RME can't do that. That's where UA really shines. Another way it shines is if I'm on the road and I bring this Aero with me, I can track vocals with all the plugins. So I can do CL1B, I can do auto tune, I can run LA2As, I can run the Neve preamp. And let's be real, one Shark chip is not a lot if you're mixing and all that. But if you're just doing Unison pre's and if you're just doing vocal tracking or guitar tracking or synth tracking, it's amazing. I had the Quad and the X6 and all that, and I have mixed some sessions with UA plugins, but the way I look at it is if I was gonna mix big sessions, an Apollo interface would be great, but for on the road, this is really the way. This has no power. It's just one Thunderbolt 3 cable. I'm so happy with it. It was $300 and I have a portable perfect setup where I can live stream with one cable. If I have to do too much, if I have to plug in all kinds of things, I just won't end up doing it if I'm on the road. So just knowing I can plug into my laptop with a pair of headphones and my laptop mic and camera and go live, to me, I love it. That is something that makes me happy. So kudos to UA and the Aero interface. I think the Aero is my favorite UA interface. The Aero or the Solo, they're really the best. For me, I just love gear. And so I have different gear for different purposes. As far as my brain of my studio, that's the RME. The UCX2 is great because for me, I have a lot of analog gear. So the analog gear is going into a converter before it hits the RME. So it's going into the ADI2 Pro. The A to D is converting through the ADI2 Pro and it's digitally going into my RME UCX. So for me, Apollo is overkill because I'm not using the plugins. On the RME, it has a monitor controller on the table, which is awesome. I have an ARC USB monitor controller so I can adjust my volume. It's unbelievable. And everything's going into my ADI2 Pro that's digitally going into the RME. So where RME shines is Total Mix. The Total Mix interface is beautiful. Oh, okay, Magnamius, you have the Babyface Pro and you're gonna go with an Apollo for Unison preamps, but you do more mixing than recording. Got it, okay. So since you're doing mixing, Magnamius, you probably need a lot of cores. Now, Magnamius, are you going to be doing a lot of Apollo plugins in your mixing session or really just you want some Unison pre's? I mean, I'll tell you what, this doesn't have the best converters out of all the Apollos, but it's damn close to all their high-end shit. I'll tell you the headphone out, it sounds horrible. It just doesn't sound good. But when I say horrible, it's really, I wouldn't mix a whole record on this. I definitely wouldn't mix a record on this, but that's why I have high-end converters. Okay, yeah, see exactly, Magnamius. You're running plug-in Alliance stuff. I mean, if you just need one Unison preamp or two Unison preamps, this is great. Now, the downside about this, I will say, is there's no digital out. And my Apollo Twin X did have a digital out, but what you gain for the lack of digital out is portability. This just has analog outs, which kind of sucks, but if I'm tracking guitar into my RME system, I just run two Mogami cables into my mixer and I'm tracking a guitar. No quality loss really. I mean, maybe a little bit, but it's no big deal. I'm not mixing on this or anything. This is maybe for live streaming, but I have a portable DAC that if I need to do like mission critical work, I'm gonna plug in. And if I need to do a quick headphone mix, I'm gonna do that. So it's not the best sounding interface in terms of DA, but the AD is actually solid. The AD is pretty good. UA said that the AD on this is close to the Twin Mark II. It specs similar, but it's not in the same class DA. The reason why I love UAD plugins, the reason why it's so necessary, I sold my Twin X. I had an Apollo Twin X quad and I had an Apollo X6 core processor. So I had 10 cores and then I had another UAD satellite. I have $1,500, $2,000 worth of UA plugins. I was using them, but I hit a point where I got kind of mad that I needed to plug in my UA interface every time I needed to use them. So if I'm on a plane, you mean I have to plug in a UA interface? It just wasn't worth it to me. So I started moving away from UA. I wanted to hold on to the plugins I had. Like for example, I bought the CL1B, the Universal Audio Softtube CL1B. I realized Softtube sells it and you don't even need a Shark chip. So I bought the Softtube version and I just replaced that with my UA. I still have both, but if I'm mixing and I need a CL1B plugin, I have the Softtube. So I'm using the Softtube plugin for that purpose. So I don't really need to mix with any UA stuff. Where the UA interface is amazing is, for example, I want to track bass and I want to track guitar. Now I can plug it into my RME and direct monitor, but there's no effects in the RME interface. It has EQ and compressor. UA is really the shit for tracking guitars. UA and Antelope got that covered. So I have all kinds of guitar and bass plugins that are UA. So all I have to do, let me show y'all. In this channel, this is my guitar channel. I could throw a tuner on here. I mean, tuner's fine. You can do that in Ableton. But I have this plugin called Fender Tweed. It's just a great sounding amp sim. So as soon as I plug in a guitar, it just sounds amazing. Now, granted, if you look at the processor, it uses 73% of the Shark chip, but it sounds amazing. So it's perfect for guitar. Another great one, if I'm tracking bass, I have this plugin called Ampeg. It sounds fucking bonkers on my bass. I really don't have anything similar on RME built in. So what you can do, obviously, is go into Ableton and set the input monitoring. I'm done with that. I don't do input monitoring anymore. I hate that. It's very clunky in Ableton. It gets off time. It's just not good. It just ain't it. So that's why I love UA for that. The other reason I love UA is if I'm on the road, I have a mobile tracking rig. If someone has a C800G or some nice mic or a U87, I literally plug it right into this, right in there, and I have a Neve preamp, so I can get that color going in and track with it on. If I want, I can track with auto-tune. This is the Access version. I actually have the advanced version. I can track with Neve preamp, auto-tune, and that's only so far using 40%. CL1B. So I have the hardware at the studio, but if I'm on the road, then I have access to my exact chain, just the software version. I even have space for the LA2A in there, apparently. I picked the silver one, but I could go with the classic. And then the Trident A range. I can literally, on one Shark chip, have all these plugins running while I'm recording. And the Neve is Unison. That's 5 plugins. To me, that's enough. I don't need more than that. Mainly because I'm not using the UA plugins for mixing. So this is my portable rig. I'll never use this in the studio to track vocals because I have all kinds of hardware. But if I'm on the road, if I'm in LA, boom, I got that right there. Yeah, the Babyface doesn't even have compressors. So that is a case for the UA for on the road. Personally, I like the Arrow for on the road. The Babyface is dope because you get access to Total Mix, but I would give up Total Mix because of the UA plugins for on the road. But in the studio, Total Mix is my jam. Okay, Tommy Stills asked, how do I use the UA in conjunction with the RME? So I don't know if everyone would like to use it this way, but this is how I use it. I just plug the monitor outputs, the speaker left and right, into my mixer. And my mixer goes into the input of my converter, my RME ADI2 Pro, and that is digitally connected to my RME UCX2, which runs Total Mix. Does that make sense? Yes, I always track with effects if I'm cutting vocals or doing guitar. Yes, always. I track with effects. So if I'm going into my system, it's like I'm doing analog. So I have a CL1B at the studio, hardware, a preamp. I'm tracking with all that stuff and going in. I might hit it light, but then I do more effects once I'm in the box. For tracking or going live, it is amazing. So yeah, Magnamius, if you ever find yourself tracking, it's kind of perfect. But for you, the Babyface Pro probably sounds a lot better than the Arrow. Thanks so much, man. Does that mean you can use the UAD plugins, but also use the RME UCX as your main interface? Exactly, yes. So the RME UCX is my centerpiece to my studio right now. The ADI2 Pro is my converter, so it makes everything sound really good going in. Yeah, smart plant, just commit. I'm the type that just commits. I've never regretted tracking with effects, ever. Ever. But to each his own, you know? I like the commitment of it. I appreciate it because then you get a tone. And I think later you appreciate when you have that tone. Usually, that's for me at least. I'm stoked. I love my setup right now. So at my studio or in my living room where my studio is, I just have 2 Mogami cables I plug in and I have a Thunderbolt 3 cable hanging. So 1, 2, 3. So I keep this in my backpack, and when I get to the studio, if I need to track guitar, this is my guitar box. And so I get all my UAD plugins going right into the RME. It's fucking amazing. And I can have console and Total Mix on my computer at the same time.